A very good evening to all our viewers. As all of you know, for the last many days, we've been reporting on the ground, first in the Kashmir Valley, after the Pahalgam terror attack, then in Jammu and Punjab, as Operation Sindoor created escalatory military tensions between India and Pakistan. And now, finally, after the first night where relative quiet has held, we're here on the ground in Chandigarh. There has been a very significant military briefing today, but before we get to that, we should tell you that the Prime Minister will be addressing the nation at about 8 p.m. today. This will be his first public comments on Operation Sindoor and what has happened since then, including the war with Pakistan. In the meantime, the military official briefing has revealed a number of interesting visual images. These images include shots of Chinese-made missiles, the debris of Pakistan rockets that have landed on our territory, Turkish-made drones, and videos of how India's Navy, along with other services, bombed air bases inside Pakistan. In fact, the turning point of these entire last few days and what led to the ceasefire, or the understanding as India calls it, is seen to be India's frontal precision attacks on the Noor Khan, the Rahim Yar Khan bases inside Pakistan, the air bases that in a detailed briefing, the Indian Armed Forces shared this video of that you can see on your screen. That's the Noor Khan air base. There are also now images available of how the runway at the Rahim Yar Khan air base was completely destroyed. I want to introduce our guest today as we look at the situation where we stand at this moment. Veteran diplomat Ambassador Manjeev Puri is with us. Welcome, sir. Military veteran General Dhruv Katoch is with us. Welcome to the program, sir. And strategic affairs analyst and columnist Professor Mohan is with us as well. Welcome, everybody. There's a lot that happened in that briefing today, but I'll play out one of the operative parts when a question was asked, what if something like Pahalgam happens again? Because that is the question on everybody's mind. How are we managing the escalatory ladder? And will this really deter Pakistan? And this is what was said.
Make few sentences and leave it for your imagination. First of all, as I mentioned, we have quantitative and qualitative edge to deliver a massive blow to our adversary. And we completely dominate in the maritime front. Indian Navy's action is part of the escalation ladder mechanism which we have worked out amongst three services. This time, if Pakistan dare take any action, and Pakistan knows it, what we are going to do. That's all.
All right, let's get the conversation started. As I mentioned, the Prime Minister will be speaking to the nation at 8 p.m. We will have a political sense of how the government is looking at what has happened, how the country is looking at it. So far, we've heard from our diplomats and our military personnel. Now, what is very significant, and I'll start with you, General Katoch, is the images that were shown of China-made missiles and Turkey-made drones. And for me, the question really becomes in the battlefield, because by the way, it did become a battlefield. Our armed forces have said about 3 times in the last 3 days that India was not seeking escalation with the Pakistan military. India was only targeting terror bases. But when Pakistan chose to attack civilian areas and military bases in India, India's military was compelled to respond in kind, and then the details of what has been done to the air bases in Pakistan has now been put on record. But today, images were shown of Chinese-made missiles, Turkey-made drones, the debris of Pakistan rockets that fell. Is India in this battle up against not just Pakistan, but Pakistan plus China? General Katoch.
Thank you, Barkha. Barkha, we were always up against China plus Pakistan plus Turkey. We know very well that for the last many decades, China has been actively supporting Pakistan both in the strategic sense and as also in supplying of arms and equipment. They are their partner, and they both claim it to be a very, very deep friendship. So there is no secret in that. Today, 80% of the weapons and equipment which Pakistan has on its inventory are from China. So, there was absolutely no doubt that China will continue to supply Pakistan even in a time of conflict, because that is what they have been doing. The only, thing which, in my analysis, is that should it come to an all-out war between India and Pakistan, I don't think China is going to send boots to the ground. But all other support which they have been giving earlier, they will continue to give in terms of weapons, materials, and intelligence support. Diplomatic and political, of course, goes without saying. And China has made that very clear that they are with Pakistan. That is one. Number two, the images which we have seen of the Turkish drones and the Chinese missile, there is a background to it. The Turkey, they gave these same drones to Azerbaijan in their war with Armenia, and they were very, very effective, very effective. And later on, they used them initially with Russia, and again, they were effective. But over a period of time, they lost their effectiveness. Basically, these drones are outstanding equipment in where there's no anti-AD defense. So I beg your pardon, where there's no air defense available. So if the opponents do not have air defense, then they're very effective. In this particular case, I think they were surprised by the Akash missiles and by our EW equipment, which was all along the international border and along the coastal areas. The whole area has been covered from the ocean area plus the land area. And when they tried to get through, 100% were intercepted. Now that I don't think was expected by Pakistan, because logically, when you send in a mass of drones, some will get through. In this case, it didn't work for them. I do understand that in some areas they got into the civilian areas, but and caused very serious damage to civilian life and property. But as far as the military establishment is concerned, there has been no damage at all. So to that extent, they have failed very badly. As far as the Chinese missile is concerned, we've seen that debris. And I think there is going to be great consternation in certain areas which are looking at Chinese equipment and Turkish equipment. There will be, those buyers are going to have a rethink as to should they really go in for an equipment of that nature, or should they look for different alternatives.
Now, to bring in the diplomatic perspective, Ambassador Puri, if General Katoch says that we were always up against... Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yeah. To bring in the diplomatic perspective, Ambassador Puri, General Katoch says we were always up against China, and we've seen evidence of these Chinese-made missiles, and that China may not put boots on the ground, but rhetorically, financially, with weaponry, armaments, it has helped, and it continues to help Pakistan. How concerned should we be about an event that is not directly related to Operation Sindoor, but has happened in the last few hours? And that is America and China's trade pact, right? I'm joining the dots here, because if we've got China as a hostile country, Pakistan as a hostile country, and the Americans cut a deal with China, how much should that concern us? Ambassador Puri.
Barkha, thank you very much. Look, we've been discussing this over the last few days. So let me say this. Chinese being all-weather friends of the Pakistan and supporting them through thick and thin, we all knew it. But you remember yesterday when we were discussing this very thing, I said, I do think that in a sense, a nudge and a wink to the Pakistanis was also given by the Chinese, because they said, guys, do what the Americans are saying. You may be asking them, but follow in, because we are doing a bigger deal with them. Look, the question of the US and China is something that we have been discussing from the day President Trump was inaugurated. And this is a matter that we should not, shy away. We should be cognizant of it. Having said this, let us be very clear that, while tariffs have been reduced considerably, they remain, that there is a certain understanding now in the United States that China is not just a nice friendly place where you can do business and make money, but it's a massive contestation. This is important for us to remember. This Pakistan thing will add to those particular sets of ideas. Other than that, look, we know that we have Chinese with whom we have economic relations. We need to do things with them, etc. But we need to remain cognizant of who they are, their interests in the matter. And look, all major powers like client states, and the Chinese have in Pakistan a client state which keeps needling India, and the India-China, I don't want to use the word contestation, but whatever it is, a kind of ability to hold sway, especially in Asia and in the global south. These issues are there for everyone to see. There's nothing new in it. Look, this requires two things from our side. One, playing the diplomatic games rather well, and I think we are doing it well. Secondly, building up our economy, because there is absolutely no answer to that. And Barkha, on a lighter but a very important note, I must say, something very interesting happened in the month of March. The International Monetary Fund, which is in the news for all the wrong reasons as far as we are concerned, released its World Economic Output 2025, and India rose from being the fifth largest economy to the fourth largest economy. Now, we may not be happy that we pipped Japan, but the fact is, we are going in the direction of the third largest economy. And then, believe me, you are in a different kind of stratosphere where different sets of political, geopolitical games need to be played.
Right. I think that's a really important point, that if we grow our economy, if we focus on that, Raja, actually our heft will come from there. And that is one of the reasons that many have argued, including military veterans. I don't know what General Katoch thinks, and I'll ask him that the ceasefire, or the understanding as we called it, is a good idea, because you don't want to be pulled into a long-term war that will hit your economy. That's one of the reasons I've heard. Yet I must ask you, because I was in Jammu the morning that, we woke up to the sound of explosions. We saw a residential colony taking a hit after our air defense intercepted drones over a very densely populated residential colony. Also a temple, the Shambhu temple in Jammu. We've seen how Amritsar has been targeted. We've seen a Gurdwara targeted in Poonch. We've seen children die in artillery shelling. I went to the border. Pakistani shells were landing inside the homes of villagers. And that very evening, we had Trump basically beat our own announcement. And 2 hours after that, we saw Pakistan violate the ceasefire. My question to you is, there are many conspiracy theories about the timing. New York Times argued that the West was really concerned that the battle was going to turn nuclear, that Pakistan was worried that its nuclear command was going to be decapacitated by India. What do you think was the turning point?
Turning point was the Indian attack on the various Pakistani air bases, which I think forced a change of attitude in the Pakistani military. I think from the briefings that the government has been doing in the last few days, off the record with think tanks, with media, they're basically saying there was no nuclear signal. So I think that's much of it is outside interpretation. What they're saying is that look, the Americans came in and said, look, something big was going to happen, find an off-ramp. And the Indians said, no way. I mean, I think if they attack us, we're going to attack them. And that there was no question of India giving off-ramp for something that Pakistan had started. So in a way, the Americans backed off. I mean, I think they might have tried this. Look, everybody wants to take credit for what happened. So Trump is master in that. So the way they jumped the gun and said, look, we did it. After the initial signal that they're not really interested in this. So that's one part. But there's a clarity from the Indian side. They didn't read any nuclear signal. They were not going to be bamboozled into going off the course or yielding to pressures from anyone. So I think India played it quite well. I mean, I think we should sometimes not take conspiracy theories too seriously. All the indications are the government has handled it quite well. And the performance of the Air Force has been excellent. I would also just add one other thing, which is really the first 2 days. I mean, I think in the fog of war, when we had so much disinformation coming, it looked like India was, on the defensive. But now I think in the last few days, I think the way they're giving out more information, they're briefing people. So there's a sense, I think, of the full story and the sense of confidence. So I suppose we'll see some of that in the Prime Minister's speech as well.
Can I just ask you, not that I bought into any of these conspiracy theories, but, Raja, sort of watching watching on a Saturday morning, it feeling like we were almost at the position of an all-out war. And I'm not exaggerating, I'm not being jingoistic, I'm just giving you very much my sense from the ground. A missile had been intercepted in Haryana. This is the shell, by the way, that had landed into like just regular homes at the border when I was there. The residential colony that was attacked, the temple, the attacks in Amritsar, kamikaze drones brought down over Amritsar. All I'm trying to understand is the timing. And I definitely agree that the air bases, that was a turning point, right? But why do you think Trump did what he did? And I know Manjeev has a slightly different perspective on the American role, so I want all three of you to respond. I'll start with you, Professor Raja Mohan.
Look, I think American role is much ado about nothing. I mean, if you can say. Look, I think all countries were saying, look, be restrained, blah, blah, blah. The Americans, I think, came in and said, look, we're getting messages from Pakistan that, can you help give them something to get off the ramp? And India said, no. I think that seems to be at least our version, as simple as that. And on the rest of it, look, Trump has a way of doing things. I don't think we should take everything he says seriously. Some of it must be taken seriously in terms of what he says about, look, he's going to get peace to Ukraine in one day, or I'm going to solve a Kashmir problem, or he thinks it's a 1,000-year-old issue. So there's a lot of that. And partly we have to understand that there's not much staffing out there. I mean, I think no assistant secretary positions have been filled. So in many ways, he's unconstrained. So I think if you're confident enough not to be bamboozled by what they're saying, and you stand your ground. And as you said, you were at the ground zero. For the first time, we're seeing actual, impact of war in our cities, which is not the case when you covered Kargil or even Galwan. They took place in the remote Himalayas. But this is really in the plains of Punjab and Jammu. So this is really a different, and in Srinagar. So this is a different kind of war. And I think for us too, it's a new experience. So the key was, can you hold your nerve in that moment and keep your line? And actually, your answer came through in terms of the attack on the air bases. And after that, I believe General Munir called Americans, and the Americans called the foreign minister, and then things started unwinding. But I just want to add one thing, Barkha, I know we're all in the news business. Sometimes adding 2 and 2 just because they're happening at the same time doesn't make it 4 or 5. That the trade deal, look, that's a bigger story between US and China. They have a trade of $600 billion. It's a big fight that's been brewing for a long time. They've had a temporary deal, but I don't think we should connect it to what's happening between India and Pakistan.
No. I just again want to clarify that I wasn't suggesting that the timing has a meaning. I was just saying that's one more factor, that when we talk about protecting our national interests, when we factor in the role of China, that's just one more element, given that we've seen China supplied weaponry in the battlefield. That's all I meant. That it's just one more factor. Not that I was trying to force fit a kind of timing conspiracy theory. Ambassador Puri, I know you have a slightly different take on the American role, so go ahead, and then General Katoch. Yeah.
I don't want to get into all these technicalities, mediation, etc. It doesn't matter. But the fact that they were able to announce it a few minutes back. So at least let's grant that this time Truth Social at least had truth with a small t. Look, let's understand. So somehow or the other, they were in the know. Maybe they did their own little bit, etc., etc. Look, I believe that our strikes and our abilities, really put the Pakistanis on the back foot. The Americans have their own sets of fears, etc., etc. All that is true. And let's also be very clear. And so therefore, the Pakistanis certainly would have requested them. And as far as we are concerned, let's understand, we are a responsible country. Look what we've been saying right throughout, that we will not escalate. We will do measured precision. And yet, yes, if you do things, we will hurt you. And we demonstrated that quite nicely across the country and so on and so forth. And so we proved our point more than succinctly. And that's why the pictures a day later after they've been developed, etc., etc. But having said all this, let's also remember that India is a large player in the world. And with the United States, there are many things that we need to do. Trade is just one of them, lots and lots of things. And so, therefore, there are issues of global geopolitics, India's geopolitics in the world, which come to the fore. And so, You of course say, look, if the guy hits me, I'll hit him bad, real hard. Hindi version, muh tod jawab milega. There is no doubt about that at all. But on the other hand, it makes sense for you to do a certain amount of listening and seeing, is it okay? Does it fit the bill? Because can you cross, let me say, two T's with one line? All this is also important, and let's look at it all positively, because all of this shows that India is a country of consequence, a country that matters, a country that is responsible, a country that can hit, and yet the world also wants us because we also fit their vested interest.
Sure, I think transactionalism is a key part now of the world we live in, and I think India is learning, right? And that's the only point I was making in relation to China and Trump, Raja, that they've done what's good for them. We've got to do what's good for us, and it's just one more factor to think about when we think about our relations with China. General Katoch, sir.
The way I looked at it is right from the beginning, when the Prime Minister announced from Bihar that we are going to take action, right from that time, our aims were limited. We are going to hit the terrorist bases. So when we hit this terrorist bases, theoretically, just theoretically, if Pakistan didn't do anything further, everything would have finished there, which means India had no intention of going, though we were ready to go, even if it meant a full-scale war. That readiness was there, but the aim was only limited. Now, Pakistan went in for a whole series of offensives on that night, on the 8th, 9th night, and then India responded to that. And that, then we made the change that we are going to take on the military targets. From the terrorist targets, we took on the military targets, and that gave the message. Now, when Pakistan decided to back off, I think India said it's fine. That was always our aim. I think, when the ceasefire was broken, it had, in my view, and I may be wrong, but it had much to do with Trump's announcement. I think it irritated the Pakistanis no great deal. And they said, how can Trump do that? So, they went in for it for whatever reason. And India wasn't too pleased either. I think if President Trump had actually kept quiet, the ceasefire would have held from the first day. But that notwithstanding, now we are entering an era of a new normal. I think the strategic messaging which has to be delivered has been delivered. And this is going to set very new precedents as we come for the coming years. In this, just one sentence I would say, we had a strategy of dissuasion right up to 2016. That is including the first 1.5 to 2 years of the Modi tenure. Then, after Uri and Balakot, we went to deterrence. And that deterrence didn't work, as Pahalgam showed. Now we are moving to compellence, a combination of hard power and non-kinetic measures. And this is going to work because Pakistan will not be able to take it. And you will see the results. It won't be immediate, but I think by the end of the year and when we come to 2026, the results are going to be very apparent. There is a change in doctrine and in the way we are going to apply it. Barkha.
I think you've addressed the question that I really wanted to ask, that if Pakistan continues to patronize terrorism, and we have shifted gear on our security doctrine, and I think we have let it be known that, if this happens again, we played out the naval officer's statement, Pakistan knows what we will do. I think that's the key question. And before I get all of you to tell me what you think that shift in doctrine is, there was another very, what I love about these military briefings is they're much more restrained than any television anchor. They're absolutely calm. They're absolutely poised. They're absolutely dignified. And I said today, the way our military briefings are and the way Pakistan's military speaks is actually the whole difference between how India has evolved as a nation and how Pakistan has evolved as a nation. Literally, our Faujis are neither political nor theological. And that is the key difference. And one of the beautiful things in today's briefing is that it covered everything from the Ramcharitmanas to Virat Kohli to poetry. And I want to just play out one little clip that reflects that.
Comes to your question. All right. चूंकि आपने शुरू किया श्री रामधारी सिंह दिनकर जी की कविता से, हमारे राष्ट्र कवि रहे हैं, और क्या संदेश जाना दिया जा रहा है। तो मैं बस आपको रामचरितमानस की एक कुछ पंक्ति याद दिलाऊंगा, आप समझ जाएंगे। तो याद कीजिए वो पंक्ति जो है, विनय न माने जलधि जड़, भय 3 दिन बीत, बोले राम सकोप तब, भय बिन होई न प्रीत। तो समझदार के लिए इशारा ही काफी है।
So, समझदार के लिए इशारा ही काफी है. Those who have to understand, a little indication is, a hint is enough. Raja, I'll start with you. General Katoch refers to how we've moved from deterrence to compellence. I think the elephant in the room for all of us is this. Pakistan is not a rational state. Asim Munir is is Musharraf into, I don't know, 100. So, if this were, God forbid, to be attempted again, a terror attack on the scale of Pahalgam, because we've been living with this now for 3 decades, so it's not out of the realm of the possible. Today, our military said Pakistan knows what we will do. If we are to understand this change doctrine, what is it?
Look, I think since the time the Modi government came to power, the idea was, how do you break out of the nuclear impunity that Pakistan had developed? That is, once they acquired nuclear weapons in the late 80s, that they could pursue cross-border terrorism without the fear of Indian retaliation. Like in 2008, we did not retaliate. Now, the problem is, how do you break out of this box? That was the big strategic question. And I think on that question, what this government has tried is, try to find ways that, look, don't accept the nuclear risk and restrain yourself, that there must be space between conventional and the nuclear, and that's something we need to explore. Which is what we saw evolve. This policy has evolved. In 2016, you crossed the LOC and did some, against the camps there. Second, in 2019, you went and bombed, used the Air Force to the terror camp there. This time, you're hitting deep inside Punjab itself. So you're saying, look, I'm not going to be restrained by the fear of nuclear escalation, and I'm going to punish you. Now, I think this is a big change in the way the doctrine has played out. But I want to warn against one thing. By merely declaring that every time you do it, I'm going to simply go to war. I think to make this a credible policy, we need to do 2 things. I think one, your capacity to prevent terror acts, that must go up. The fact that we've not been able to really still track down the guys in those who did Pahalgam, that I think we need to really transform our intelligence capabilities in order to prevent these kind of incidents and to root them out at the source itself, rather than wait for a big incident to happen and then you're back into a war mode. Second, I think we also need to increase the military differential between our power and the Pakistani power. And I think there, while if you look at the absolute numbers, yes, India is much bigger army, bigger Air Force, etc. But operationally, in the theater, Pakistanis have the capacity to fight back, which we saw some of that. Therefore, I think the rapid modernization of India's armed forces, which has really been not going very well. Our defense spending is less than 2% of the GDP. And our acquisition procedures are really one of the most slowest in the world. And our R&D, DRDO, a lot to be desired. So the government has talked about reforming defense sector, but they've not done very much. So I hope the declaratory policy of that we'll go to war against terror must also be backed by long overdue reforms in the defense sector.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, General Katoch. If you want to add to that, we are taking final comments now. General Katoch, go ahead.
Oh, I totally agree with Raja. You have to carry out defense reforms, and I hope the 2 defense corridors which are coming up now in UP and Chennai, in Tamil Nadu, that has to be given a boost. And there's a great deal to reform. The government has made some steps, but I think we have a long way to go. As far as deterrence is concerned, that compellence, I think we need to pay much greater attention to the non-kinetic measures, especially in terms of the Indus waters. As far as the Jhelum as far as the Chenab is concerned, that is something we can do a great deal with, and we should make it effective. That will be more effective than any amount of military hardware which we may like to employ. Barkha.
Yeah, Ambassador Puri, where are we going from here? I think you made a great point about, look, the stronger you are as an economy, because how has China China became too big to ignore, and then China became a bully. I think we've got to become too big to ignore and not become a bully. And one of the great points, I thought it was one of the most powerful moments in Vikram Misri's briefings, and it's really unfortunate that he has been trolled, and I think we've all called that out. But he said Pakistan is commenting on those who are criticizing our government. We are a democracy. In our democracy, people are allowed to criticize their governments, unlike yours. It was a real sign of a self-confident nation. So just a thought about where we go from here.
Barkha, absolutely. And come on, let's first of all join you in a complete condemnation of trolling the most wonderful officer, the Foreign Secretary. Look, you become economically strong for a country which has contestations on its borders. You will become militarily strong. So all that Raja and General Katoch have said, obviously, we must do those particular things. We also need to work on one thing. I think we need to understand, which is this narrative that somehow or the other in the Western world, the Pakistanis are able to cling on to, which is, give me the proof. Look, after 9/11, look at the 1267 list. All the fellows were stationed there. Osama bin Laden was found there. Every single time people are found there. Yet they are able to say brazenly, oh no, we don't have any active guys, we don't support them, etc., etc. And even though people know, they still keep repeating the same thing. In my opinion, this is not an easy task. The main reason why I say so, forget them being a rogue state, a terror sponsoring state. No. They're a client state. And that particular thing is something which for a country like India is very difficult. Look, we are a self-standing, when we talk about, autonomy of action, all of those things. Why? We are today the largest country in the world. We are the fourth largest economy. We will become the third largest economy. We are a self-standing country which is going to be a pole in the world. There's no doubt about it. Pakistan is a large country with great capabilities. Don't underestimate them, including their militaries. And they are a client state. That's what makes this whole game very difficult, because they are on your side. So fellows play their game. But we have to work assiduously on this particular thing. And as we become stronger, we become a country of much greater interest to the others. The others will start seeing very clearly, much more than what they are doing today, that, hey guys, our interests lie with being with India. This client state is really of no use.
Well said. I'll just get a 30-seconder from Raja on this Western narrative. It's been frustrating. In the last few days, I've done some appearances on Western networks. And it is infuriating because the old classification of this as a dispute between India and Pakistan, this is a kind of rubbishy, old, almost an archival trope that Pakistan has been able to sell to the Western media. And my argument with Trump is that he positioned his comment in the same framework, which really just irritated me. Now, can we just ignore him? Just a quick last word on that, Raja.
No, I think we should ignore him. And I think the deeper problem is what Ambassador Puri and you pointed out in other shows. The Western media, the general liberal media's core argument, you always equate India and Pakistan. You don't call them terrorists, you call them gunmen, militants. So I think that tradition is what we need to break. So I think, remember when you were covering in the early 90s, anytime a little guy came from the US, the whole country will go into a tizzy. Oh my God, they said Kashmir at the briefing, and like a headless chicken, it was said about us. But I think we've come a long way from there. I think you are a confident nation, as we said. We can deal with the US. We've done deals with the US. We've differed with them. So I think we should be more confident. And I think, but the deeper problem is, how do you break this link, which goes back to pre-independence, the link between Muslim League and the Anglos imperialism that took place. And I think the continuation of that in a way that is endured, and I think we need a lot more intellectual work to break that inability or refusal. I mean, one thing to say, Trump, what about New York Times? The Guardian, the ultimate liberal newspapers, they're not willing to recognize the truth when they know they suffered 9/11. New York Times is published from New York, and they publish op-eds by Haqqani. So I think there is a hypocrisy. The liberal hypocrisy is very, very deep. So I think some of it we should take in our stride. In the end, what matters is, do you succeed? Do you win? That's what matters. So as Americans say, winning is not the only thing, it's actually everything.
That's right. And I'll couple that with the fact that you just have to, if we focus on our country, our growth, our economy, that's the best answer to all the naysayers. The Prime Minister will be speaking. I think we'll have a lot to talk about after that. So hope to have all of you back with us. Maybe later tonight, maybe tomorrow, or in the days to come. Thank you so much, General Katoch, Professor Mohan, and Ambassador Manjeev Puri. Our special coverage here from the ground, analysis, reports, interviews continues. Do stay tuned in. But for now, we'll take a quick break and we'll see you soon.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.